The final topic in this chapter is exporting artboards and assets. So in Illustrator, there's an option we can use called export and export for screens. And we also have an asset export panel. And this is going to help us to either send an entire artboard or just pieces of our design to others to look at. So these formats can be saved as JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, no, not GIFs, JPEGs, PNGs, PDFs, or SVGs, which is scalable vector graphics, which are great for web also. They're going to be optimized for use on the web, on devices, handheld devices, iPads, on screen, whatever. We are going to be able to export both an artboard or an asset. So we're going to start with just artboards. First thing we need to do is change a few things from our pixel previews. So we're going to turn off the pixel preview in the view menu. We don't need that. And we're going to fit this artboard in the window. And then we're going to go to our file menu and we're going to choose File, Export, and then Export for Screens. This is going to give us dialogue specific to output for screens. So the first thing that we have is we have options for artboards or assets. We're going to work on artboards first, so make sure that that one is selected. And then we're going to look over to the right and we're going to choose all. This is only one artboard, so a range of one and all are exactly the same. No big difference there. Where we want this to go, the path, let's take a peek at this. Looks like it might be going to our file. Yep, it's going to the Lesson 16 folder, which is good. We're just going to send it there. So that's fine. We'll say choose to that. And then we have some options here. Open it after you export. Usually you want to see it and make sure it's good. Create subfolders for things that are scaled. We're going to say yes, do that. And we're going to start with this first format and we're going to change it to be a JPEG with a quality of 80. So it's going to save it at scale of 1x, which is 100% size, but it's going to save it in a JPEG or a compressed format, JPEG 80 compression, and it's going to add a suffix of -80 to the end of the file name so that we can quickly and easily understand that it's the JPEG at the 80%. Let's see. We're going to say that's all we want for now, so we're going to say export it. And this gave us a new folder in here called 1x. And if we open this 1x folder, here's our artboard saved as a JPEG, and it's at 80% quality. So if I double click on my Mac, it's just going to open in preview, I believe. It's not going to jump into Photoshop necessarily, which is fine. But this is an artboard JPEG that we could use for whatever reason. Probably going to regret that I told it to open. The other thing that we can do is just export assets. So using the asset export panel, we can collect things that we frequently might want to export. So maybe, grab some logos and some buttons and things like that. And then we'll be able to export them for the people we're helping work on a project, like a web designer or a web developer. So with our selection tool, we're going to click on the artwork labeled Venus. Got that right there. Oops, let's see, Venus. Try to just get that. There we go. And then we're going to hold down Shift and we're going to click on the artwork for the Earth. So just these two graphics are the two things that we want. We're going to come up to our window drop down and we're going to choose the Asset Export window, which is this one. And it says right over here, drag artwork to this panel to generate multiple assets. So it's a dragging situation into this area. So with these two selected, we're going to click and drag until we see a plus sign over here, and then we're going to let go. And it's smart enough, it knows that they are two different things. We have asset number 1 and asset number 2. The other cool thing is that these are linked. So if we go in here and we change something, we change a shape or a color or a stroke, it's automatically going to update in our asset export panel as well. Let's get the one that was named Venus. We're going to click on this and we are going to attempt to rename this. There we go, Venus. And this one is Earth. A little bit easier to understand. We're going to click on the Venus asset. Notice it has the blue outline around it. And in the lower part of the export settings, we can export it in different formats. So the scale can be 100%, 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, so that's getting larger. It can get smaller, or we can scale to specific widths and heights here as well. We're going to choose in the format the SVG, that's a scalable vector format, and because that can scale to whatever the need is, we don't need to set a scale here. It's kind of like having Illustrator available in your web graphics yet, because it will automatically scale depending on the device it's being shown on. Then we want to add something else. We want to export more than one version. So we click this Add to Scale, and in this case, we want to send a 100% or one-time version of a PNG, which is it has transparency, so you can use it on websites. So in one move, we'll take Venus and it will output 2 different versions that our web developers might want to use, or web designers. So both of those are going to be created. At this point, if you wanted a suffix or other things, you could continue adding them, like a 2x or whatever. From here, we're just going to click on Export. And it's going to ask us where we want to go. And in lesson 16, they've already made a folder for us called Asset Export, and that's where we want to put this. So we're going to choose that. And it's working on exporting those 2 different formats for us. And when it's done, we'll be able to see the finished product. So again, I'm going to pop into Finder and go to Desktop, Illustrator 2020, Lesson 16. And in the Asset Export folder that we just put them to, in my 1x, I have Ping, a PNG at 100%, and I have an SVG of Venus, so scalable vector graphic, ready for me. So this is great, like I said, if you're doing mock-ups for web or apps or whatever, and you have your pixel perfect designs, you want to save your search button, export it as a PNG or a JPEG, or a scalable vector graphic, you can do that, and you can do it, instead of doing it 1 by 1 by 1, you can batch it and ask for 2 or 3 different versions at once. So that is the end of chapter 16. The biggest takeaway here right now is probably going to be packaging your files and creating PDFs. So we won't get to the web part until a little bit later. All right, that is it. Thank you for listening.